Have you ever had just seconds to decide whether to risk everything to save a life? That's exactly what faced Lieutenant Michael Torres of the Coast Guard during the worst flooding the region had seen in decades. As waters rose and communities became isolated, one call would test not only his professional training, but his personal resolve as well. The morning had started like any other emergency response day during the catastrophic weather event. Rescue teams had been working around the clock, evacuating residents from areas where access was rapidly disappearing. Reports were coming in constantly. Families stranded on rooftops, elderly residents unable to evacuate, and pets left behind in the chaos. When disasters strike, it's often the most vulnerable who get left behind, Torres would later explain. We try to reach everyone, but sometimes priorities have to be made. It was late afternoon when the call came in. A local had managed to contact emergency services using a satellite phone. They reported seeing what appeared to be a dog stranded on the roof of a farmhouse. The structure was nearly submerged, with only the pitched roof still visible above the churning waters. The Coast Guard team had already been operating for 14 hours straight. Fatigue was setting in, and headquarters was considering grounding the helicopters due to approaching nightfall and deteriorating conditions. This would be their final mission of the day, if they chose to accept it. There are moments in life where you have to make choices that define who you are, Torres reflects. Sometimes those choices aren't in any manual. Share in the comments, have you ever had to make a split-second decision to help an animal? What did you do when faced with that moment of truth? Hit like because ordinary people are heroes, subscribe to Eternal Bonds, and share this story of compassion that shows the unexpected connections that form in our darkest hours. But what started as a routine call was about to become something much more personal. The sky had darkened to a menacing slate gray as the helicopter approached the coordinates. Below, the landscape had transformed into an alien terrain. Miles of muddy water where fields, roads, and neighborhoods once stood. Occasional rooftops punctuated the murky expanse, looking like scattered islands in a vast, turbulent sea. The rain had been falling for 5 consecutive days, the meteorological report would later state. With ground already saturated from previous storms, watersheds failed catastrophically, causing unprecedented flooding across 3 counties. Trees protruded from the water like skeletal fingers, power lines dangled dangerously, and occasional flashes of metal suggested submerged vehicles. The water itself wasn't still. It moved with purpose, carrying debris ranging from furniture to sections of houses. In some places, the current formed swirling eddies, powerful enough to pull down small structures. It's not just the water, Torres explained in the mission debrief. It's everything the water brings with it. Each piece of debris is a potential hazard, both for victims and rescuers. The farmhouse came into view as they rounded a bend where a hillside once stood. The 2-story structure was partially collapsed on one side, with water reaching halfway up the first-floor windows. The roof, a steep-pitched slate affair, typical of century-old farmhouses in the region, now served as a precarious island. And there, at the highest point near the chimney, lay the dog. Even from altitude, the animal's distress was evident. An elderly golden retriever, its coat matted and darkened by mud and water. The once proud working farm dog appeared gaunt, with visible ribs suggesting days without proper nourishment. Its muzzle showed significant graying, and one of its hind legs was positioned at an awkward angle, possibly injured during the escape to higher ground. The dog's physical state told a story of survival against mounting odds. Patches of fur were missing from its shoulders and flanks, likely from struggling through debris or squeezing through tight spaces to reach safety. Despite its weakened condition, the animal maintained vigilance, head raised slightly to track the helicopter's approach. Torres had served with the Coast Guard for 16 years, specializing in emergency response and disaster relief. His career had taken him through hurricanes in the Gulf, flooding in the Midwest, and even international humanitarian missions. But something about this particular scene, the solitary animal maintaining dignity despite abandonment, struck a deeper chord. I've participated in hundreds of rescues, he would later tell his team. But sometimes one stands out, and you can't always explain why. As they hovered above the scene, the pilot, Captain Rodriguez, voiced concerns. "The structure looks compromised. That roof could give way any minute, and we're pushing our fuel reserves as it is." Torres studied the scene through binoculars, noting how the water occasionally lapped at the lower edges of the roof when waves formed. The dog had positioned itself strategically at the highest point, but even that spot was vulnerable to the steadily rising water levels. Time was working against them. "We've extracted people from worse situations," Torres responded, though his voice betrayed the uncertainty he felt. "Let's get closer and assess." As the helicopter descended for a better view, the dog's reaction changed. Initially motionless, save for tracking the aircraft with its gaze, the animal now struggled to its feet. Despite obvious weakness, it stood facing the approaching helicopter, its stance communicating neither fear nor aggression, but perhaps something more profound: hope. The rotor wash created ripples across the water's surface, causing the farmhouse to shudder slightly. Small pieces of the damaged roof edge broke free, disappearing into the churning waters below. "That structure is failing," Rodriguez warned through the headset. "Whatever we decide, it needs to happen fast." As Torres assessed the situation, a decision point was approaching. Torres analyzed the rapidly deteriorating scenario with methodical precision, drawing from crisis assessment protocols while adding his own intuitive understanding of risk calculation. This wasn't merely about following standard operating procedures. It required balancing multiple competing factors simultaneously. In critical situations, your mind processes information differently, Torres would explain later during a debriefing session. You're simultaneously calculating structural integrity, environmental hazards, victim status, and equipment limitations, all while your instincts are processing factors you can't consciously articulate. The farmhouse structure presented unique challenges. Unlike human evacuees who could assist in their own rescue, the dog's unpredictable behavior added a layer of complexity. Would it panic when approached? Could it remain stable during extraction? The animal's age and apparent injury complicated matters further. Torres considered their tactical options. A direct landing on the roof was immediately ruled out. The damaged structure couldn't support the helicopter's weight. A hover extraction would be necessary, but that brought its own complications. "Rodriguez, what's our hover stability in these wind conditions?" Torres asked. "Gusting to 30 knots from the southwest. It's manageable, but we'll have significant drift. Not ideal for precision work," the pilot responded, while adjusting controls to maintain position. Torres mentally cycled through extraction scenarios. Standard procedure would suggest deploying a rescue swimmer with a pet carrier, but that would place both the swimmer and animal on an unstable surface. Alternatively, they could attempt a basket extraction, lowering it directly to the dog's position, but would an injured, frightened animal willingly enter? Torres tapped his communication system. "Martinez, what's your read?" Technical specialist Elena Martinez had been studying the structure through specialized equipment. "The roof's integrity is compromised along the eastern edge. I estimate 10 minutes, maybe 15, before significant structural failure. Water rise rate suggests complete submersion within the hour." Torres stared at the golden retriever, now watching the helicopter with an intensity that conveyed understanding beyond what most would attribute to an animal. Something in that gaze shifted Torres's thinking, from protocol-driven to adaptive problem-solving. "I'm going down myself," he announced. This departure from standard procedure was met with immediate pushback. "Sir, with respect, that's not recommended," Martinez countered. "I'm lighter and trained for animal handling." "Your points are valid," Torres acknowledged, "but look at the dog's body language. It's showing signs of territorial response. As team lead, I make the call." What Torres didn't verbalize was the inexplicable connection he felt. Something about this particular animal, its dignified suffering, its solitary struggle, resonated with him on a level that transcended professional duty. As Torres prepared for descent, he formulated his approach strategy. Unlike human rescues, where verbal communication guides the process, animal extractions require reading subtle behavioral cues. He would need to establish trust immediately, approaching from the dog's line of sight while remaining low to appear less threatening. "I'll need the modified harness, the one with the quick-release frontal attachment," Torres instructed, selecting gear specifically designed for animal extraction. "And have the emergency muzzle ready as precaution, though I'm hoping we won't need it." He selected treats from their emergency provisions, high-calorie nutrition bars that could entice the animal while providing immediate energy. Securing these in his pocket, Torres performed a final equipment check before positioning himself at the helicopter's side door. Rodriguez stabilized the aircraft 20 feet above the roof, fighting against crosswinds that threatened to push them off position. The noise and downdraft visibly agitated the dog, who struggled to maintain footing on the slippery surface. "Easy approach, no sudden movements," Torres reminded himself as the rescue line was secured to his harness. Animals read intention and energy better than humans. As Torres prepared to descend, he locked eyes with the dog. The animal's gaze held steady, exhausted but alert, frightened but resolute. In that moment of silent communication, Torres felt certain of his decision. "Commencing extraction," he announced as he began his controlled descent towards the roof. The wind whipped around him, the helicopter's rotors creating a deafening roar that seemed to make the very air vibrate. Below, the waters continued their relentless rise, occasionally sending waves washing over the lower portions of the roof. The golden retriever maintained its position, watching Torres with unwavering attention. As his boots touched the slick surface, Torres immediately crouched to lower his center of gravity and present a less intimidating profile. The roof material felt unstable beneath him, subtle movements suggesting the structure could fail at any moment. The dog's initial reaction surprised everyone monitoring from above. Instead of retreating or showing aggression, it remained perfectly still, eyes locked on Torres as if it had been waiting specifically for him. "I'm about 15 feet from the target," Torres reported through his headset. "Beginning approach." Animal appears calm, but alert. He began the delicate process of moving across the pitched roof, testing each step before committing his weight. The slate tiles, slippery from days of rain, threatened to break free with each movement. "Sir, eastern section showing increasing stress patterns," Martinez warned through the comm system. "Recommend expediting extraction." Torres acknowledged with a quick hand signal while maintaining focus on the dog. He was now close enough to see the animal's labored breathing, the subtle tremors in its legs suggesting both exhaustion and hypothermia. "Hey there, buddy." Torres spoke softly, his voice calm and measured despite the chaos around them. "I'm here to help you. We're going to get you somewhere safe. What would you do in this situation? Tell us in the comments how you would approach rescuing an animal in distress while ensuring your own safety." The dog's ears perked slightly at the sound of Torres's voice, the first indication of potential trust forming. Torres slowly extended his hand, palm down in a non-threatening gesture, allowing his scent to reach the animal. "That's it," he encouraged as the dog cautiously stretched its neck forward, nostrils flaring slightly to process this new human scent. "We don't have much time, but we're going to do this right." A loud crack suddenly echoed from below as part of the roof structure gave way. The entire surface shifted, causing Torres to brace himself while the dog scrambled to maintain footing. The margin for error had just drastically narrowed. With his plan set, Torres moved into action. Torres initiated contact protocols specifically designed for high-stress animal encounters, drawing from specialized training modules he had completed during advanced rescue certification courses. The psychological framework required understanding animal behavior under extreme duress while maintaining human safety parameters. Animal psychology in crisis situations operates differently than normal behavioral patterns, Torres had learned during his specialized training. Fear responses can be unpredictable, but they often follow recognizable patterns that trained rescuers can anticipate. The approach methodology involved calculated movements designed to minimize territorial threat responses while establishing human presence as beneficial rather than dangerous. This required Torres to suppress natural human instincts to move quickly toward the animal, instead adopting slower, more deliberate positioning. Every rescue teaches you something new about reading animal communication, Torres reflected during post-incident analysis. This particular situation required adapting standard protocols to account for structural instability and environmental hazards simultaneously. Torres initiated the extraction protocol with methodical precision, his movements economical yet fluid, as he secured his own position with a roof anchor. This specialized device, rarely deployed except in compromised structural scenarios, distributed his weight across a wider area while providing a stable connection point. "Anchor secured. Proceeding with subject approach," he reported through his communication system, his voice steady despite the roof's continued deterioration beneath them. The tactical challenge now centered on implementing the modified cooperative animal rescue technique, a specialized procedure developed for extracting injured wildlife, but adapted here for a domestic animal in crisis. This approach differed fundamentally from human extractions, requiring biomechanical adaptations that accounted for quadruped body structure and stress responses. Torres withdrew a packet from his rescue vest, tearing it open to release the aroma of high-calorie emergency rations. The scent activated the dog's olfactory response immediately, triggering a primal survival instinct that momentarily overrode fear. "Subject showing positive orientation response," Torres noted as the dog's nostrils flared, its attention now divided between the human and the potential nourishment. Torres began feeding small amounts of the calorie-dense material, each offering bringing the animal incrementally closer while allowing him to perform a tactile assessment of its condition. His fingers detected an elevated heart rate, but surprisingly strong pulse, suggesting resilience despite the ordeal. "Martinez, prepare veterinary assessment kit." Subject shows signs of dehydration, but cardiovascular function appears adequate for transport, Torres communicated, using technical terminology that conveyed precise medical information without alarming commentary. A new complication emerged as Torres attempted to apply the specialized animal harness. Unlike training scenarios with compliant animals, this rescue required adapting to an injured subject on an unstable surface. The dog's injured leg prevented standard harness configuration, necessitating an asymmetrical application technique rarely implemented outside theoretical exercises. "Implementing alternative harness configuration delta," Torres reported, referencing a modification that redistributed pressure points to avoid the injured limb while maintaining extraction security. Suddenly, a violent shudder ran through the entire structure. The farmhouse foundation, undermined by days of powerful currents, was beginning to shift. Torres registered the vibration through his boots, a distinctive frequency pattern that experienced rescuers recognized as imminent structural failure. "Time window collapsing," Rodriguez warned from above. "Satellite monitoring shows tributary surge approaching your position. Water level increase expected within 8 minutes." This information catalyzed a tactical shift. Torres abandoned the gradual trust-building approach, moving to the emergency extraction protocol. This high-risk procedure sacrificed comfort for speed, prioritizing rapid removal over minimal stress. "Initiating expedited sequence," Torres confirmed, his hands moving with practiced efficiency to secure the final harness attachments. Just as he completed the connections, a section of roof near the chimney collapsed entirely, creating a gaping hole through which the churning waters below became visible. The sudden structural change caused the entire roof to tilt at a 5-degree angle, subtle enough to maintain temporary integrity, but sufficient to trigger instability warnings in Torres's trained perception. The dog, sensing the imminent danger, attempted to scramble away from the collapsing section, but was constrained by both injury and exhaustion. In this critical moment, Torres made a split-second adaptation to the protocol. Rather than attaching the guide tether as procedure dictated, he physically gathered the animal into a protective embrace, using his body as a shield against the environmental hazards. "Subject secured manually. Conventional tether bypassed. Request immediate vertical extraction," Torres commanded, activating his emergency retrieval signal. From above, the extraction team responded with coordinated precision. The rescue cable tensioned gradually, calculated to avoid sudden jerks that could startle the animal or further compromise the roof. As they began rising, another section of the structure gave way, sending spray and debris into the air around them. Torres rotated his body to shield the dog from the fragments, feeling the impact of several pieces against his reinforced gear. The dog, surprisingly, remained still in his arms, its body tense but not struggling, almost as if it comprehended the coordinated effort to ensure its safety. Vertical ascent initiated. Subject compliant. Estimated retrieval completion in 42 seconds, Torres reported, maintaining the technical communication protocol that kept the team synchronized. The ascent presented its own set of challenges. Wind patterns disrupted by the surrounding topography created unpredictable air currents that caused the cable to sway. Additionally, the added weight distribution of carrying the dog, rather than using the standard harness system, required continuous micro-adjustments to maintain stability. Experiencing lateral drift. Compensating, Torres noted, as he shifted his weight to counterbalance an unexpected air current. The dog, seeming to sense the need for stillness, pressed closer against Torres's chest, its body conforming to his movements. At 20 feet above the collapsed structure, they encountered the most dangerous phase of the extraction. Transitioning from open air into the helicopter cabin while maintaining control of an unpredictable animal. This critical juncture typically required precise coordination between pilot and crew, with Torres maintaining stability while managing an animal whose behavior could shift unpredictably. Transitioning to cabin entry. Subject remains cooperative, Torres reported, as Martinez and Rodriguez worked to position the helicopter optimally. The combination of weight distribution changes and wind interference created a delicate balance that demanded constant micro-adjustments from the flight crew. As they approached the aircraft's threshold, the dog's demeanor shifted again. The confined space and mechanical noise triggered a natural stress response, causing the animal to tense against Torres's hold. However, rather than struggling violently as many animals might, the golden retriever seemed to understand that resistance would endanger them both. "She's adapting to the situation remarkably well," Martinez observed as they completed the transition into the cabin. Most animals in this condition would be thrashing by now. Torres carefully transferred the dog to the prepared area within the aircraft, a specialized compartment designed for emergency medical transport. The space had been configured with soft surfaces and restraint systems that prioritized comfort while ensuring safety during flight. Extraction complete. Subject secured. Initiating return to base for veterinary assessment, Torres announced as Rodriguez began the flight back to the Coast Guard station. What surprised everyone aboard was the dog's behavior during the journey. Rather than cowering or showing signs of continued distress, she maintained visual contact with Torres, her breathing gradually stabilizing as the helicopter distanced them from the disaster zone. "It was like she understood that we were taking her somewhere safe," Martinez would later note in her report. There was a calmness about her that seemed almost deliberate. The flight to the mainland facility took 18 minutes, during which the dog's condition continued to stabilize. Her heart rate, monitored through portable equipment, showed steady improvement, while her alertness suggested that dehydration and exhaustion were less severe than initially feared. As they approached the landing zone at the Emergency Response Center, Torres found himself making an unexpected decision. Standard protocol dictated transferring rescued animals to local animal control services for processing and eventual placement. However, something about this particular rescue felt different. "Rodriguez, what's the procedure for personal adoption of rescued animals?" Torres asked through the communication system. The question caught his team off guard. In their years of working together, Torres had never expressed interest in keeping any of the animals they had rescued. His professionalism and adherence to protocol were legendary within their unit. "It requires paperwork through the administrative office, but it's definitely possible," Rodriguez responded. "Are you serious about this?" Torres looked at the golden retriever, who had positioned herself so that she could maintain visual contact with him throughout the flight. There was an intelligence in her gaze that went beyond simple animal instinct, a recognition of the bond that had formed during those critical moments on the roof. "I think I am," Torres replied, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. As the helicopter touched down at the emergency facility, the most complex phase of their mission was complete. But for Torres and his unexpected passenger, a new chapter was about to begin. as visible change would lead to a decision no one saw coming. The veterinary assessment revealed remarkable physiological resilience that impressed the entire medical team. Beyond the initial observations, Dr. Chen discovered evidence of exceptional survival adaptations that suggested this animal possessed unusual strength reserves. Her metabolic responses indicate she entered a conservation mode during the crisis, Dr. Chen documented in her medical notes. This natural survival mechanism helped preserve essential body functions while minimizing energy expenditure during the prolonged exposure. Laboratory results showed electrolyte levels that, while depleted, remained within ranges that avoided serious complications. Her kidney function had adapted remarkably well to dehydration stress, and her cardiovascular system showed no signs of permanent strain despite the prolonged ordeal. What we're seeing here represents textbook survival physiology, Dr. Chen explained to the veterinary students observing the examination. Her body's natural emergency systems functioned exactly as evolution designed them to work. The behavioral assessments revealed cognitive processing that exceeded typical expectations for animals experiencing trauma. Her ability to distinguish between medical necessity and threatening behavior suggested intact reasoning capabilities despite recent stress. Within the climate-controlled medical bay of the emergency response facility, the transformation in the golden retriever became immediately apparent to the veterinary team awaiting their arrival. Dr. Sarah Chen, the lead veterinarian on duty, had handled countless emergency cases, but she was struck by this animal's composed demeanor despite the trauma she had endured. Her vital signs are remarkably stable for what she's been through, Dr. Chen noted as she conducted her initial examination. Heart rate, blood pressure, and respiratory function all indicate a resilient constitution. The dog's behavior during the medical assessment revealed characteristics that had likely contributed to her survival. She remained alert and cooperative, allowing the medical team to perform necessary procedures without sedation. Her responses to stimuli were appropriate and measured, suggesting cognitive function had remained intact throughout the ordeal. "Look at how she tracks movement and responds to voice commands," Dr. Chen observed. "This animal has retained her mental acuity despite everything she's experienced." What became most evident was the dog's acute awareness of her environment and the people around her. Unlike many trauma cases who become withdrawn or hypervigilant, she seemed to actively assess each new person who entered her space, making deliberate choices about trust and interaction. Torres remained present throughout the examination, and the veterinary staff couldn't help but notice the animal's consistent attention to his location. Whenever he moved within the room, her head would turn to track his position, though she never showed anxiety when he stepped away. "She's clearly formed an attachment," Dr. Chen commented to Torres. Animals often bond with their rescuers, but this level of focused attention is particularly strong. Further, the medical evaluation revealed several positive indicators. Despite her ordeal, the dog showed no signs of serious injury beyond superficial scratches and mild dehydration. Her muscle tone suggested she had been well cared for before the disaster, indicating she had likely been someone's beloved companion rather than a stray. Based on her condition and behavior, I'd estimate she's approximately 8 years old, Dr. Chen explained. "She's clearly been socialized with humans and has received proper veterinary care in the past." As the examination progressed, the dog's comfort level visibly increased. She began to respond more actively to gentle touches, and her tail, which had remained still since the rescue, gave a few tentative movements when Torres spoke directly to her. "That's the first tail movement we've seen," Dr. Chen noted with satisfaction. "It's a significant indicator of psychological recovery beginning." The most remarkable moment came when Dr. Chen stepped away to complete her paperwork. The dog, who had been lying calmly on the examination table, carefully repositioned herself to maintain visual contact with Torres. The movement was deliberate and purposeful, demonstrating cognitive decision-making rather than instinctive behavior. "I've never seen anything quite like this level of selective bonding so quickly after a trauma," Dr. Chen told Torres privately. "She's clearly chosen you as her anchor point for security." Torres had been considering his earlier decision throughout the medical evaluation, weighing the practical implications of adopting a companion animal at this stage of his life. However, watching the dog's continued orientation toward him resolved any remaining uncertainty. "Dr. Chen, what would be the process for me to formally adopt her?" Torres asked. "Given the circumstances of her rescue and the lack of any previous owner identification, the paperwork is relatively straightforward," Dr. Chen replied. "Are you prepared for the long-term commitment this represents?" Torres looked at the golden retriever, who seemed to sense the importance of the conversation taking place around her. Her expression conveyed an intelligence and emotional depth that made the choice feel less like a decision and more like a recognition of something that had already occurred. "I think the decision has already been made," Torres said. "We've been through something together that created a bond neither of us expected." As the administrative processes began, the dog's comfort level continued to improve. She accepted food and water readily, and her natural personality began to emerge. Despite her recent trauma, she showed signs of playfulness and curiosity that suggested her spirit remained intact. 3 months later, the outcome exceeded everyone's expectations. The transformation that followed defied every prediction made by the veterinary team. Torres's modest suburban home had become the perfect environment for a remarkable recovery that showcased the resilience possible when rescue creates genuine partnership rather than simple relocation. The golden retriever, now known as Marina in honor of their maritime rescue, had adapted to her surroundings with an enthusiasm that surprised everyone familiar with her case. Her morning routine included a vigorous inspection of the fenced backyard, followed by a leisurely breakfast shared with Torres on the deck overlooking the harbor. "She's become a completely different animal," Dr. Chen observed during a follow-up visit. "The confidence and contentment she displays now is extraordinary." Marina's integration into Torres's life had been seamless in ways that exceeded typical pet adoption experiences. She seemed to intuitively understand his schedule, positioning herself by the door when his shift patterns indicated departure time, and greeting him with controlled excitement upon his return. The bond that had formed during those critical moments on the collapsed roof had deepened into a companionship that enhanced both their lives. Torres found that Marina's presence provided a sense of purpose and routine that complemented his demanding career, while Marina thrived in an environment that offered security, stimulation, and unwavering attention. "What makes their relationship special is the mutual respect," Torres explained to colleagues who visited. "She's not just a pet I care for. She's a partner who contributes to our shared life." Marina's intelligence continued to manifest in unexpected ways. She had learned to distinguish between Torres's work gear and civilian clothing, responding differently based on his intended activity. When he prepared for Coast Guard duties, she would settle calmly in her designated area, seemingly understanding his absence would be temporary, but potentially extended. However, when he dressed for recreational activities, her excitement level increased dramatically, and she would position herself near the door in anticipation of inclusion in whatever adventure awaited. "She reads situations better than most humans I know," Torres reflected. "There's an emotional intelligence there that goes beyond basic animal instinct." The most profound change was visible in both their overall demeanor. Torres's colleagues noted increased energy and satisfaction in his professional performance, while Marina displayed a confidence and joviality that made her a favorite among neighbors and visitors. Their evening walks through the coastal community had become local highlights, with Marina greeting familiar faces and exploring new scents with the enthusiasm of an animal who had rediscovered life's possibilities. "Every day with her feels like a reminder of why rescue work matters," Torres said, as he watched Marina investigate something interesting in the garden. "She didn't just survive that day on the roof. She found her way to exactly where she belonged." The success of their partnership had inspired Torres to become involved with local animal rescue organizations, sharing his experience with others considering adoption. Marina often accompanied him to these events, serving as a living example of the profound connections possible between humans and animals who find each other through crisis. As they settled into their established routine on this particular evening, with Marina contentedly positioned beside Torres's chair while he completed paperwork, the sense of mutual satisfaction was unmistakable. The trauma that had brought them together had transformed into a foundation for a relationship that enriched both their lives in ways neither could have anticipated. Tell us in the comments about a moment when you witnessed an unbreakable bond form between a person and an animal. These stories of connection inspire our entire Eternal Bonds community. If this story of unexpected rescue and lasting connection touched your heart, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to see how quickly life can change when we choose to help rather than look away. Sometimes, the most meaningful relationships begin in the moments when we decide to care about a stranger's survival. Our next rescue story proves that miracles happen when we least expect them, and when we're brave enough to believe in second chances.